So when it comes to being objective, what we are looking to govern is the selfish component. It's the selfish component of our relationships that disturbs us, that creates the mental agitation, and that creates disharmony. So let's have a quick look. So it means we need to understand the distinction between selfishness and selflessness. So we've covered this in chapters 7 and 5. When we talk about attachment, it's always referring to the negative relationship with someone. It's love plus selfishness. So love means what? When we use this word love, what is it?
Emotional dependency?
Nope. Love is always used in a positive context. The word love is always positive.
Caring for someone, same or more than yourself.
Caring for someone, same or more than yourself, yes. When I'm selfish, basically what I'm saying is my well-being is the most important thing, and I'm going to serve that, and I don't care what happens to anybody else. Whether it's on a one-to-one level, in the way that I treat my spouse, or a macro level, I'm very selfish about my business, and I don't care if I pollute the planet as long as I'm making money. But when you say that I care for another person as much or even more than myself, then what I'm saying is that there is a sense of oneness. Your well-being and my well-being are essentially the same. You and I are the same. You look at the image of a parent holding his or her newborn child for the first time. Now when you look, you can see, okay, there's adult and child. There are two separate entities, obviously. We can talk about two individuals. But that's not the experience of that newborn parent. It's not, I'm here, you're there. There's just this coalescence of oneness. There's a feeling of being at one with that little creature. It's not me and you. For the purposes of language, of course, we say, I love my child. But the feeling is exactly as you say, there's just well-being now. There's our well-being, there's we. So love then is this sense of identification or oneness with the other person, their qualities, their properties, and so on and so forth. What turns it into attachment is when you say those beautiful qualities and properties, I want them for myself. That makes it attachment. And that violates the autonomy of that little individual, whether they're 2 weeks old, 20 years old, or 80 years old. They have their own autonomy. They have their own existence. And so when I say, give me, I'm not taking into account that, well, they may not want to give me at some point. Maybe they do, but the point is that I'm not taking into consideration their perspective. I'm only taking into consideration my perspective. And so when it comes to the parent-child relationship, and this is a powerful one, we have that experience of oneness. I love, of course, but I want my child to think a certain way, feel a certain way, have certain values, follow in my footsteps, whatever it happens to be, because it's what I want. It becomes attachment-based.
But if you think you want it because it's better for them, you make that assumption.
Yep.
Then what? Because that's what parents do.
I'll give you a great example, and this is out of one of the books. So this is a family that my teacher knows in Mumbai. The boy was just coming to the end of his high school, and he was a maths prodigy. That was his thing. He was just, amazing. He gained a scholarship, fully paid, to study abroad here in the US. Now, it's his nature. He's getting a free trip to study, to express and flourish in his chosen field. His parents said, no. His reasoning, he should be with us. From the perspective of the parents, what does it feel like? Love and care. It feels to them like love and care. From an outsider's perspective, when we take into account the whole scenario, we can see clearly the parents are just attached to the boy and they don't want him to leave. He should be with us. So this sort of answers your question. The problem with attachment is that we won't recognize it as attachment. To us, it will seem like our duty of care as a parent. And so this is where the humility must come into every relationship that we have, is that maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I am not seeing things as clearly as I think I am. The other marker of attachment, or the thing that shows it to be attachment, is that we will experience mental agitation. So if the boy were to say, "No, I'm going," and the father flies into a rage and the mother starts crying, it indicates immediately that there is attachment. Any time we suffer in a relationship, it's only because of our attachment to the person, not because of the activity or their behavior. Not that their activity or behavior necessarily should be condoned. It should be condemned and shut down. But the point is that I'm suffering because of my attachment. So this is the point, that we may believe that it's our duty of care, but it could also be attachment.
So for example, let's say you're talking to your wife, you say, okay, I'll watch the kids an additional 3 hours so that way you can go to the gym and go shopping and do whatever you want. And you do it because you want her to be happy. Is that being selfless, or is that being, I guess, when does the ego and the personal motivations, obviously I want her to be happy, because if she's not happy, then that's gonna, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, like, so when does it become selfless now all of a sudden kind of turn back around and it becomes selfish?
No activity per se can be categorized as selfish or unselfish. It's only the attitude in it. So it becomes selfish when you say, "I'll look after the kids for 3 hours so you can do this," so that you can get something for yourself out of it. When that's the motivation initiating that action, then it's selfish. If that were not there, then I wouldn't do it, indicates it. So by example, you might say, the reason I say that, it might be the case that the reason I do this is so that my wife and her friends and her family think I'm a good husband. Entirely selfish. I just want to virtue signal to my wife and her family and her friends. Now imagine if, looking after the kids, you knew that she wasn't going to think anything and no one else was going to find out about it. Every time you offered this, no one knew that you did it. Am I as motivated to offer that to her now? If I think about it, no, probably not. So that shows the degree of selfishness in it. But it'll be a mixture, because you genuinely do have that feeling of wanting your wife's well-being, and you genuinely want to look like a good son-in-law to your parents-in-law, so they'll be both functioning. There'll be some selfishness, some unselfishness, and some purely just, it's my obligation to give her some space. The point is that as human beings, we can pick which one we're going to focus on and nourish. The thoughts that we choose to continue and to repeat, those are the ones that grow. So I might recognize, I'm only really doing this so that, to be honest, I just want some time away from her. And I just want to look like a good son-in-law. Okay, I've got these selfish motivations, but put those to the side. Focus on, I want her to have 3 or 4 hours to herself so that she can be happy, because I know it's good for her well-being to have her alone time. I want that for her. That's where you focus your attention. Yes, I've got these other selfish motivations as well, but okay, just gently put those to the side, and instead that's where you put your attention on. This is what I'm doing, and this is why I am doing it.
And that makes it selfish.
That makes it unselfish, yeah. Unselfishness is still ego-based because it's something that I want to happen. I want your well-being. Who's the one doing the wanting? Me. I'm the one doing the wanting. I want to build a children's hospital to serve an underserved community. I want it to happen. I want them to be served. Now, it's obviously a huge step up from, I'm going to demolish a children's hospital and put up a resort so I can make more money. It's a big step up from selfishness, but we've got to recognize that even my unselfishness still has that perspective of my own ego. So it's the quality of the thought that makes it less selfish. And so choose the thought that is definitely less selfish, the thought and the feeling that is less selfish. And that part continues to grow. But it requires conscious effort. And this is where the objectivity comes in. Objectivity is intellect governing mind, which means that I'm choosing the thought, not my mind.
And discipline.
Discipline, yeah, discipline. The whole thing is just discipline.
So Glenn, Lewis Carroll, the author, and he talks about 4 different loves. And in our language, we have the same word. but he goes through each one being distinct and different. And I'm wondering if this applies to all those loves. At the end he talks about love for God, because he was very religious.
Yeah,
But
so-
it appears like the same thing applies to all of those.
Yeah, in fact, what perhaps he's talking about, puppy love is very much about someone wants me, someone likes me. It's very, very ego-centered, almost narcissistic in a sense. But it's perfect at that level of development. You can't condemn it, because if you're 12, 13 years old in puppy love or whatever it is, it's perfect for your level. And then you talk about, say, a love for a spouse, that's much more based on what we were saying earlier, service and sacrifice. When you're in puppy love, you're not thinking about serving and sacrificing for that person's well-being. You're just more caught up in the infatuation. It's more self-centered. A marriage is ideally a lot more based in service and sacrifice, so you step out of your ego. It's more unselfish. And of course, love for God is entirely ego-less. There's no ego involved whatsoever once you have love for God. So I haven't heard it, but it sounds like he's talking about these 4 categories of love as being with increasing selflessness, reducing the selfish component at each step along the way. So yeah, I should have a listen to it.